Welcome back to another episode of the TFR podcast. We are back today to review the 2025 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and analyse the recent success for Lando Norris in the championship. He is now the F1 World Champion for the first time in his career after sealing it last weekend in Abu Dhabi. And it is myself, CJH, and Tudor on the podcast today to discuss and let you all know our thoughts really on that result. It's going to be a slightly different podcast, slightly shorter episode because we've got the big season review coming in a few days' time. So if you want a full analysis of everything of the season, that'll be the one to go to. But Tudor, we had the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and there was a lot of hype, a lot of build-up before the race. I mean, even us, we did a qualifying podcast. You know, that's how much hype there was going everywhere for that finale. And you have to say, I mean, to be honest, in terms of finales go, it was looking like it could have been a bit of a thriller at the start because we had Verstappen get away in the lead, defending off from Lando, and then Norris got overtaken by Oscar Piastri. And then for all of a sudden, there was Charles Leclerc right on the tail of Lando, and you're thinking this could be the moment for Lando that he could be in a bit of trouble. But it wasn't meant to be, and he hung on, didn't he?
Yeah, he definitely did. He was race hyped for like quite back a few weeks, like even since Vegas, people were hyping up Abu Dhabi. I could see on their Instagram page hyping the title fight. But yeah, I was hopeful. I was rooting for Max, but I was happy with any of the three contenders to win the championship. But yeah, happy that Max got a jump on Piastri and got into P1, and then Piastri managed to pass Norris. And then yeah, it was a bit interesting at the start with Leclerc keeping behind Lando Norris, but I didn't have any high hopes because we already know the pace of the Ferrari car. Even if you could be Max Verstappen in that Ferrari, that car has a limit. But yeah, towards the end of the race, McLaren managed to get their pit stops right. They got no blunders or anything. They just followed carefully. They didn't tell Lando to push after Piastri or Max too much, like in Vegas. They knew that there was no reason to be the hero for a single race, and they should have just secured the championship, and that's what they did.
Exactly, and this is the point. We were saying beforehand, was it Russell that was going to be the biggest threat to Lando? And, you know, on paper you would say yes, it would be, you know, the Mercedes duo, if you like, that would be putting the pressure on there after the recent results that they've had, particularly Kimi Antonelli. But he obviously had a terrible qualifying, was way out of the picture. So it was down to Russell, but that Mercedes wasn't quick. It wasn't quicker in this kind of circuit, and it was Charles Leclerc who was the surprise challenger. But as you say, Tudor, there's only so much that even Charles Leclerc can do in that tractor of a Ferrari, and really, he gave it a good go at the start, but there was no way he was going to end up finishing ahead of Lando. And I think this is what we've seen with this year with that Ferrari, is the real struggle of the distance of these kind of longer races, where they're fine maybe for the first stint, but then come later in the race, it's a bit of an impossible task for them to keep with the others. But for Lando, that did mean he was in the clear, and he was actually putting a bit of pressure on his teammate come the end of the race. But it was only the third place he needed, which he came across the line with. I think the word to describe those celebrations was probably relief, Tudor, because it was obviously an amazing moment for McLaren and Lando, and his family was there, and his girlfriend, and they were all, you know, soaking it up and having, you know, an amazing kind of moment, shall I say. But it was, yeah, I think more relief from my eyes, for them, that they weren't beaten by particularly Verstappen, and they've got this over the line.
Yeah, it was a happy moment for many and some sad moments for some, but you have to appreciate it. It was his first championship. You can't deny that. Oscar Piastri was a bit more sour. Even like I saw on Lando's post, like many drivers like wrote nice messages of congratulating him, and Piastri's message was just congratulations with no just the word. But
Mm.
I mean, yeah, it's sad for him as well. He missed out on his first championship, but he might have a chance next year if that car is good enough. But yeah, he still should be really proud of himself. Him and Max, they put up a really good fight and managed to bring a freeway title fight all the way until Abu Dhabi.
I do think though with Piastri is there's an element there of he blew his own chances, so he can be annoyed, but he should really be annoyed with himself that he even got to this stage of the season and has actually lost it, because obviously he was unlucky in Qatar, but I mean really he should never have kind of allowed this to get down to Abu Dhabi. Those races like Baku and others, were his real downfall in terms of Lando taking this title. And yeah, I think you're right, sure. It did seem a bit odd in some ways that Piastri was more sour about it, if you like, than Max. I know Max won the race and did all he could do, and I guess maybe that's why Oscar was a little bit more annoyed. But yeah, I think he was definitely over it though, come the FIA gala the other night, where it all seemed fairly kind of back to normal, if you like. And, you can kind of understand it as well. It's his first fight for a title. And everyone says, Tudor, oh, well, he'll be a multiple champion and he'll get another title down the line. But it's never quite that simple, is it? I mean, this is Lando's 7th season in F1. I don't think anyone said that Lando's a terrible driver at any point in his career. But it has took this long for him to actually get that opportunity of winning a championship. And who knows, he might not get it again.
Yeah, it is quite a possibility. I mean, next year it's a full regulation change. We know the Mercedes engine will be good, and McLaren
Well,
will
we
be using
think.
it.
We think.
We think, by
Let's not
but
get
we
ahead
know
of
we
ourselves.
think. Yeah, we think the Mercedes engine will be one of the best,
Yeah.
but again, it is more of an engine regulation that we know of. But the aerodynamics and the chassis also matter, but it's a big gamble. Next year, like I said, uh, anyone can be a big surprise. Some top teams can fall off. Some, like Williams, can be like a black sheep or an underdog and come up like they did this year, honestly. Last year, what, they were like P9 constructors, no hopes. And then this year, randomly, they managed to get P5 in 2 podiums, three if you count the Kota sprint one. And they
Yeah.
have even bigger chances. They put much of their resources in the 26 car.
Yeah, Williams came out of nowhere really this year, because they've all saved it up for kind of next year really, right from the get go, and then here they are, 5th in the standings. But so I think that's the point. You just don't know how things are going to end up, and you're right. The Mercedes engine should, in theory, be good next year. I did see a bit of talk actually that Mercedes, I think it was Toto Wolff, a quote from him, that it was a bit like, pointing at Mercedes might not keep those kind of engines getting supplied to lots of different teams for too much further into the future. I mean, I kind of understand it, because let's be real, Mercedes have actually been getting beaten by the customer teams quite a lot actually in this regulation. I mean, if you think like McLaren for the last couple of years, but then even Aston Martin were kind of doing it to them at the beginning of 23. So for Mercedes, on paper, they should be, if their engine's good, they should be right up at the very top of the field come next season. So that does naturally already mean there's a team going to be ahead of McLaren. If it works in that way, it might not, and it might have there might be a bit of an importance on aero to begin with and your chassis. and that kind of balances things out where with the engine. But it's going to be fascinating because McLaren, no doubt about it, have been top of the pile this year by a long way. But it was very, very tight for Oscar and Lando in terms of sealing the championship, which Lando obviously did. And the fear for them is this probably will be their best shot because look at Norris, Verstappen, shall I say, in terms of how bad that car was early in the season. And he's basically almost had just the second half of the season to claw that gap back and get it actually competitive to the very end of the season. Can we still say, even though Norris won the championship in the end, that there's still big flaws there in terms of both him and Piastri's kind of championship credentials down the road, in terms of when the cars are a little bit more balanced, that this might be their easiest shot at a title?
Yeah, there's many people saying, and myself, that maybe the championship was given by them mostly by the car than their actual driving self, but their driving skills. And I mean, it's Oscar's third season. There is a chance that like a driver can win
Mm,
the title by their third season. There's even been people winning in their first season. But honestly, the amount of mistakes done by both drivers kind of makes their driving skills and their worth of winning a championship a bit less credited than it should be. Yeah, because the McLaren has been the fastest car throughout the whole season. No one really managed to get close to it. Maybe Red Bull by the end of the season, but they're still far ahead of them. Uh,
abs-
yeah, mostly the car just helped them a lot because both of Lando and Oscar did many, many mistakes throughout the season.
yeah, and I think this is the point. As Verstappen said, it was the mistakes of others that kind of allowed him into this fight. And he obviously went on and dominated the race and got that victory, but it was not enough for Max. And yeah, they it was very much an element of keeping your chin up after that result because you could see there's the race engineer for Max, Giampiero Lambiase, was very emotional on the pit wall. I think there was actually a lot of personal issues that's been going on behind the scenes that has kind of been mainly why he was upset. It wasn't necessarily the result itself, but it just shows though, Tudor, how much they pour into this, as you would expect in terms of a championship fight, because they've came back from so far and to lose it by 2 points is quite gutting, despite the fact that they really shouldn't even be in this position.
I mean, yeah, it's a shame, honestly, that they came so close and they had such a quite a high chance to win it. But I think they should be proud by themselves. Max Verstappen closing, if I remember, 104 points gap since Zandvoort or Monza, and closing it down by only 2 points by the end of season is a huge achievement by any means.
Absolutely.
It's I think Max Verstappen like isn't that sad that he lost the championship. I mean, he already has four of them. Even in the I think pre-race interviews, Max was like playing a bit with Piastri and Norris. He was saying, "Oh, I already have four of them at home, and I already know my autograph. Why would I need another one?" So I was kind of playing with them, thinking that, oh, he's laid back. He doesn't care that much about the championship, so I shouldn't push too hard. But I think, yeah, he Max Verstappen definitely likes Formula One. But I think now that he has a daughter, I mean, a second daughter, and just he's starting a career in GT3 and even endurance racing maybe in the future, and his sim racing. I don't think cares that much. I mean, he loves racing. He if he loves racing, he doesn't. I think, in my opinion, doesn't care about just winning championships. He just likes being there, being in a car and driving the car.
Yeah,
That's what I can see.
I think you're right. There's a more relaxed Max, I would say, in terms of compared to what I've seen before, in terms of just actually the whole approach to things. Because I think part of that is there was an acceptance early in the season that the kind of fighting for the championship was off the cards. So really, for him to try and get this, or keep this alive, he's needed quite a bit of good fortune as well. McLaren with that DSQ in Vegas was the biggest one for me, because at the end of the day, if that never happened, well, we would have never even had this kind of title decider between, Verstappen and the two McLarens. So I think that's the thing. You're right. It's kind of they've already had their big success, and they really shouldn't have probably even been anywhere near more success this year. But in the end, he's actually won the most races out of anyone this season, and yeah, it's kind of a positive way for them to end the championship, considering how it was looking earlier on. And they do now, or Max, shall say, has now the statistic, Tudor, of every single race winner of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix since 2018 now, I believe, has gone on to win the championship the next season. Because Lando won it last season, and he obviously went on to win the title, and so on, so on. Do you think this is an omen for Verstappen that he will be champion again next year, or are you not a believer of things like this?
I mean, I hope so, but of course, the Red Bull ditching Honda and going for the Ford, the powertrain and engines. Oh, I don't think is it engines as well?
It's a kind of Ford slash the Red Bull kind of powertrains
All right.
factory, if you like. So, they're working in partnership.
So yeah, it's something completely new. They had never been in Formula One before. I mean, in the modern era.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, there, from what we know, it looks semi-positive from, again, what I know. But I mean, yeah, with Adrian Newey being gone and many other Helmut Marko now actually
Mm.
being gone and Christian Horner. I mean, that doesn't really matter. Mostly Adrian Newey is what I want to say matters. Their their department might be lacking a bit. And them, a new, like, Ford and Red Bull Racing making an engine and powertrain, that's being their first season making one, might put them on the back foot a bit. Again, they were this year on the back foot as well, and Max Verstappen managed to get so close. So again, also there's been reports, if I remember, like at the beginning of the season when drivers were testing the 26 cars in the simulators, that Max didn't really like the cars that much. So that might be a downside as well.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's going to be an element of watching this space with that, because at the end of the day, everyone is saying that Red Bull would be rubbish next year. There's no guarantees. They could make a really good engine, and they could really surprise everybody, and come out with a bang. And to be honest, at the end of the day, if they're at least competitive, then the driving of Verstappen as well can bring himself into play, as we have seen this season, where the Red Bull has not been good on multiple occasions, but Verstappen's managed to drag a result out of it and drag himself into this title fight. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. But kind of bring it back to Abu Dhabi a little bit. Where do you think it was lost for Verstappen this season in terms of championship? Could you pinpoint something, or is it not quite that simple?
Uh, It's not quite that simple, but there are like two main races there people are, and myself are pointing at, and that's Spain, of course, with him and Russell colliding, and him receiving a 10-second penalty, I think. And then at Silverstone on the safety car restart where he spun, that's mostly the two races where he lost out on big points. But also, yeah, that will be the main loss of him.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think that moment of rage from Verstappen in Spain really, I mean, he wasn't happy about it when the media asked him after the Abu Dhabi GP, did that kind of mistake in Spain cost him the title, which he, very quickly swatted that away. But it is kind of true that, for someone like him who's been so consistent over the years, that really, was the kind of thing that it really did cost them the most. I think the Antonelli crash at Austria, that happens. That happens during a season. Driving into another driver and getting a big penalty, that doesn't normally happen. And maybe some would say that that's just part of the characteristics of Max Verstappen and that makes him what he is. But if he didn't do that, he would be a 5-time world champion. And, it's a tricky one when we say stuff like that, because at the end of the day, you could go back so many things throughout the year and cherry pick, well, if this happened or that didn't happen, and you'd have a very different looking championship. How about on the other hand, what do you think won Norris the title? What moment sticks out in your mind of, that was when, Norris made the difference. That's when he sealed the title for himself.
I wouldn't say an exact race, but mostly his pace comparing to Piastri throughout the whole season. If I were to say a single race, then it would probably be in Baku or Splash. At the same time, he DNF'd at Zandvoort and Canada. But I would say Norris's pace compared to Piastri for the season, because even at the start of the season, where Oscar was winning almost every race, um, Norris was like let's say in P2, P3, maybe P4. So he wasn't that far away from Piastri. But now in after the summer break, when Norris started getting his pace up, Piastri was somewhere in like P4, P5, P6. So that lost him a big gap of points.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You're right. It's the consistency of Norris throughout that has got him this title in the end. Despite being fairly inconsistent at the start of the championship. But for me, Tudor, I feel with Lando, it was that double header of Mexico and Brazil. Those races, I feel for me, were the real big ones that basically put one hand on the title for him. It didn't quite end up as simple as that in the end, and it went down to the wire. But I just felt like the way he destroyed everyone at Mexico, and then even more destroyed everyone at Brazil, and totally dominated every single session, that for me was the real statement of intent there of, I'm going to go and win this championship, and no one's actually going to be able to stop me because, I'm so far ahead of everyone. And when you saw Piastri making that mistake in Brazil in the sprint race and things like that, and the whole with what happened with Verstappen in terms of, the bad qualifying, Lando was just on it. And I feel like that just gave him that buffer that, yes, he had a real rocky end to the season in terms of mainly the team, but by his performances in those races, it allowed him to have some breathing room. Because, to be honest, if he didn't have the breathing room that he had, then he probably wouldn't have won the championship because of how badly the final couple of rounds went in terms of the overall performance and package. And I think that's the thing with this season, Tudor. It's not been like a normal season in terms of, like when we had the Hamilton Rosberg championships, it was every single race. They were 1-2. Nobody is really beating them apart from a rare occasion. And so it comes down right to the fine margins. All three of those drivers that were in the title mix have had actually pretty iffy, points of the season. And Norris and Piastri, you can't exactly say they had a perfect season, did they?
No, they didn't have at all. I mean, like I say, they made many mistakes throughout the season. Max, he did have a few more mistakes than in general with, like I said, Silverstone and Spain. And yeah, that meant that some other teams and rookies managed to get an advantage. Let's say like Hajar getting a podium at Zandvoort, or Hulkenberg podium at Silverstone, or let's say I don't know, Bearman P4 at Mexico. Many small teams and rookies managing to get a podium or even top five in the quite consistently in this season. And yeah,
Yeah,
you can
well,
see that they didn't get as many points in general. I mean, Sauber managed to get 70 points. Many like midfield and back marker teams were like above 70 points. I think every team was about above 70 points except Alpine, which last season it wasn't like that. I think like the last three in the constructors were around below 50 points.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you could see that the season got much closer and more competitive throughout the whole grid in general.
I do think the whole field was very close this year, and those that were at the top, they just had that slender advantage, kind of over the others that allowed them to break clear, and that's why McLaren were always really at the top end of the order throughout the season. And it was kind of a different championship compared to a lot of others because no one was developing the car much throughout. When we've seen in other seasons the performance really swing through developments, when this year no one's really brought much after the summer break, because they're all focusing on next year, which in some sense allows for the order to remain quite close or certain teams to stay where they were. And so yeah, in a whole really, I'm glad for Lando because this could have been his only chance for who knows how long, to win this title. And I think he does deserve it in the end. I think any of the three, to be honest, could have deserved it. Maybe Piastri slightly less so because of the way his season's just fallen apart, and that would have been kind of a bit out of the ordinary if he somehow scooped it up at the end. But for Lando, yeah, he did what he needed to do, and he can say now that he is world champion. He has took the number one on his car already, and well, it wasn't on the car for the post-season test, but he obviously had a very gold helmet, and we'll be seeing plenty more of the number one next season. And yeah, fair play. I think he well deserves to kind of milk it a little bit and enjoy it for what it's worth. But do you think? What do you rate his chances for next season retaining the title? If we can already look ahead like that, I mean, if you're a betting man, Tudor, and I don't know if you are, how safe of a bet would it be for Lando to, hold on to that title?
It'll be a fair chance, but it's risky, honestly. I mean, it's risky to bet on anything and or any driver or any team
Very
because
true.
it's one of the biggest regulation changes of in Formula One. So anyone can come on top, anyone can fall, but again, Mercedes, from what we know, their engine looks good. McLaren, they have the facility and the personnel to make a good chassis and aero kit. It's just, and again, Norris also now has knowledge of how to mentally, how to prepare for a title fight, even from last season a bit, and now for this season for an actual proper title fight. So if everything turns out good with the car, Norris is prepared, and I think definitely wants to win another title. I would say it's quite fair chance, maybe 50% chance he can win it again if everything goes his way on the car department.
50%. That's not bad. I think he might take those odds or percentage before next season because we just don't know how things will turn out, and it could be a bit of a lottery, which is going to be exciting to see. I mean, it's not long. It's not long till next season, and there's already going to be preparations coming in. We've already seen there's a little teaser clip, if you like, from Aston Martin of the Honda engine for next year. And the crazy thing is, testing is literally pretty much the beginning of February. So we've got the second half of this month, January, and then we're basically almost there, and it'll all be in full swing. It's going to be one of the quickest turnarounds ever, and with new regs, it's going to be fascinating to see who will be where. But to kind of round things off with Abu Dhabi, then we had running through the result, we had Verstappen obviously winning, Piastri second, Norris third, completing the podium. We had then Leclerc in fourth and George Russell a distant fifth. Not a great end to the season for Mercedes. Fernando Alonso was sixth. What about his performance, Tudor? I mean, really, we have to say Aston Martin were much more on it for this kind of weekend. I mean, they managed to secure their seventh place position in the constructors standings. Not the greatest season from them, but at least a nice little high to end the season on for the two drivers getting in the points.
Yeah, Fernando looked really good throughout the whole race, and honestly, I was hoping a bit that the Norris would end up after pitting behind Alonso, because we know that Alonso is a very big fan of Verstappen. And he'll definitely defend against Norris. So Max has a higher chance. Even in qualifying, there's a clip of Alonso slowing down and
Yeah,
looking back to give Max a tow. So yeah, really good performance from him. But throughout the whole season, at the start of the season, definitely looked very bad for him. Stroll beating him quite consistently. But then after the upgrade package at Imola, he really started getting better results, and the car definitely didn't fail him as much as it did before the upgrades. But yeah, a nice way to finish off the season with a P6. He got P10 in the standings from P12 to P10 in a single race. So yeah, he managed to get himself back in the top 10.
yeah, and that's the thing that crucial finish there of 8 points. Like you say, managed to get him in the top 10 of the standings, which is kind of crazy considering he didn't score any points through pretty much a good chunk of the first part of the season and was right towards the very bottom of the standings. So, a great end to the season for Fernando, and maybe a little warm up there for what's to come next season with Aston Martin being fully run by Adrian Newey as team principal, and then the Honda engine going over from Red Bull to the Aston Martin. They could definitely be one to watch and potentially a contender for next season's championship, because we just don't know. They could rock up and be with the best engine and the best aero. Who knows? And we'll cross that bridge when we get closer to next season. But Esteban Ocon finished seventh. A good few points for him as well, because he's had a bit of an iffy season, hasn't he, Tudor? But he's kind of, that's again a decent result for him to end his championship on, considering it's not been his greatest year.
Yeah, Esteban Ocon really has been forgotten by many this season. He hasn't even been showed a lot because his qualifying pace was most of the times lackluster. He managed to get his pace up towards the end of the season, because Haas and Red Bull, I think, were the only teams still bringing upgrades after Kota, or I forgot what race, but they were like the last teams to bring upgrades, which helped him because from what I remember, like he was complaining every weekend about a braking problem he had, and finally at Abu Dhabi he reported that the mysterious braking problem was fixed, so that managed to help him quite a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's quite bizarre, really, in some ways, how stuff like that. You do wonder how much that hinders them with how close the field have been this season. Because yeah, Fernando there, and sorry, shall I say Ocon, suddenly came back alive in that final round because he was able to hold off another driver who's had a disappointing season, Lewis Hamilton, who recovered to a P8 finish, and again, just a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, shall I say, after the race on the radio, with Ricardo Adeyemi on his engineer, where it was just a little bit tense between them, and just a bit of a misunderstanding, I think, in terms of the communication, in terms of thanking for the whole season, and that they were, going to go again next year. There's a little bit of radio silence for a while from Ricardo, and I think, yeah, for Lewis, it's an element now getting into the winter and really turning things off. That is literally what he said. He said he's going to chuck his phone in the bin and switch off for the next month or two and go again for next year. And we'll kind of get into his season, shall I say, a bit in the season review podcast. But it's not been great. And there's an element there, Tudor, where they'll be glad it's over.
Yeah, I think Lewis definitely thinks, and the whole Ferrari team thinks it's gladly over. Yeah, really bad season for Lewis. Just doesn't really have any highlights. Maybe China Sprint, but you can't say much. So never really looked bright for him at any point. Charles at least managed to get some podiums, but I know he's definitely not happy with the team as well. From having a constructors fight last season all the way to Abu Dhabi to falling to fourth. And I think Max Verstappen scored more points than both of the Ferrari drivers. I think
Yeah, I think you might be
it's
right.
a it's a very big letdown. Honestly, it's again they promised at the end of 2024 that they'll remake a whole new car for 2025 and it'll win constructors, only to
Go
be
backwards.
almost, yeah, go backwards and almost be as bad as the 2020 season with their car. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, their engines for next year, the rumors are looking meh. They're not looking bad, not good. It's just a bit hopeful, let's say.
I, f- I
Uh,
think that's the point though, Tudor, is they maybe don't want to put too much hope out there because look at what they were like before this season. People were thinking Ferrari going to be fighting for the championship and stuff like that. And it was a huge disappointment, you'd have to say. There was so much hype about Hamilton joining Ferrari and, you know, those two going at it for the title and leading them to a constructors. And it's been building up remarkably since the very beginning of the 2024 season when that transfer was announced. And there just feels like an element now of just, we can take a breather now from all this and just, you know, reset a little bit and go again next year because there was just so much expectation on it all at the beginning of this season and the talk really of them being a lot better than they were. And at least now it's a fresh, clean slate for them, and they'll rock up to testing with hope at least of a much better season in store. I think it can only be better. I don't think Ferrari will be as bad or worse because I look at previous reg changes and they usually do an okay job when the regulations change. You know, they are decent, you know, very, very big team in terms of the grand scheme of things. So we will see. But the rest of the point scorers was Nico Hulkenberg in P9 and another kind of just solid, steady job from him. And his teammate was passed for P10 on the last lap by Lance Stroll right round the outside. I believe this is the last overtake of these regulations, if I'm correct in saying that Stroll overtake.
yeah, I think it might be. I don't
Hmm.
know that. I just know that the last DRS activation was by Kimi.
Kimmy, yeah.
But by overtake, yeah, I think it is because it might have been, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think it. I mean, it
don't
was a good
know.
move. I thought it was right around the
Yeah,
outside and that sweeping left-hander, and obviously on the grippier tires, but got the job done. And yeah, pleased for Lance. To be honest, he gets a lot of grief, particularly on this podcast, that's for sure. And he got his point in the bag. There was teams such as Williams, who were really off the pace in Abu Dhabi, quite surprisingly, after their podium in Qatar with Carlos Sainz. They were nowhere to be seen, and they were miles off it. As well as RB, actually, they were even worse than Williams, actually, in Abu Dhabi. And it was a little bit of a shake-up once again of who was where, because you had Antonelli and Sonoda once again towards the back. But and that was that. That was the final round of the season. Were you glad for the championship to end, Tudor? Did you think 24 races, I've had enough of this by the end? Or is there an element here of like, because we know 2026 should be an exciting season with the whole reg changes, there's an element of when you get to the end of a long season like this, not like we've been taking part or something, but you kind of feel ready for it to kind of naturally conclude.
I mean, honestly, for me, this season went really fast by. I
Really?
just remember watching, being on my chair and watching the first Australia race and watching Carlos Sainz going to the wall. But
Yeah.
yeah, time just flew by, honestly, for me. It's been summer break. When you are in a break, like when there was the summer break and now the winter break, yeah, honestly. time went by really hard for me to wait for the next race. But I think
Yeah,
that's naturally when you get used to a week by week race, and then randomly for 3, 4 weeks you have nothing to do on to watch on the weekend.
yeah,
But yeah, it's happy it's over as well because many people are, I mean, I'm talking more about the actual staff and team members of the Formula One teams. They must be really tired.
sure.
24 races might be like for viewers of Fluke, like, oh, okay, 24 races in a whole year. That doesn't seem like much. But if you're actually there traveling from country to country, preparing everything, training, and all of everything they do, it's really straining on them. And it might be even too much for them because it's just the number of races grew really quickly in the past few years, and more wouldn't be a great addition, especially with sprints as well. Even more strain on them. They're taking a really needed break.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and it's a short break as well. And I mean, to be honest, you see some of the drivers now; they've still had their FIA gala to do. They had the post-season test. It's not like they hit the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi, and it was like, oh, get me on the beach somewhere. The season's finished. They still have stuff to do, and it'll. I think it's about a week off they have or two, particularly Christmas time. I think they're off, and then that's it. Back in full swing for these new regulations. I mean, I have enjoyed this season. If I don't know, it feels like it's gone on a long time. Maybe that's because I've been doing endless podcasts, Tudor, and it feels like I've aged a lot more throughout this season. But I mean, yeah, it feels crazy that that wet race in Australia was all the way back in March time, and yeah, it's kind of nuts that we've had 24 races since that point. But like I say, we'll be back next week. Yeah, it will be next week actually. For our season review podcast, there'll be quite a few of us on that one, and we'll be reflecting on some of the predictions we made at the start of the season. And there'll be a full analysis of each team and giving our thoughts on the drivers. So you will not want to miss that episode as we wrap up things before Christmas and New Year and then going into 2026. But thank you, Tudor, for this podcast.
Thank you too.
Not a problem. And if you enjoyed this episode and you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. Good to see plenty of new subscribers in recent weeks, and you can also like the video if you've enjoyed it. If you're on your audio platform of choice, you can also follow. We'll be back next week, like I say, for the season review, and we'll see you in the next one.